Hello everyone, welcome to this webcast. My name is Jerome Buto and I will be discussing data protection and disaster recovery practices for the VMware View Business Process Desktop solution. Looking at today's agenda, this webcast will be split up into 4 sections. First, a brief overview of the VMware Business Process Desktop. Subsequently, we'll discuss considerations and benefit of a flexible backup solution. In the third section, I discuss the specifics around implementation of a solution. Lastly, I will demonstrate backup and recovery operations using Acronis Backup and Recovery 11.5. Let's get started with a solution overview. Business Process Desktop solution is about having the ability to manage offshore and outsourced desktop environment. Based on VMware View, it provides a robust architecture ensuring user productivity, scalability, compliance and security mandates, and streamlined desktop management. A backup product should help in following 4 categories in such environments: data backup, restore capabilities for both data and system recovery, encryption of that data, and a method to ensure security of the data. When looking at backup and recovery of the VMware Business Process Desktop, a number of things should be taken into account. First of all, you must not neglect the protection of the infrastructure components. Specifically speaking, the connection broker, Active Directory server, and the VMware vCenter server. Where possible, backup of these components should take advantage of agentless backup technologies, which take advantage of VMware APIs to create backups using snapshot technology without installing components inside of the VM. This drastically simplifies management and increases the scalability of the backup process. Also to be considered is the need to protect the data that the users are constantly creating. User data will be stored in a repository which will need to be protected accurately so that you can recover any data from it, whether it be a specific item, so for example a Word document, or if it was the full persona. Now that we've covered the requirements, let's take a look at the benefits of implementing Acronis Backup and Recovery 11.5 for the Business Process Desktop. Use experienced agentless backup. When dealing with large-scale desktop deployments, you need a solution which is very robust. As we all know, users are very resourceful in breaking and challenging the environment they are provided. Because of this, the solution needs to be independent from user interaction to ensure its robustness. In the Business Process Desktop implementation, users rely heavily on VMware View personas. These personas are dynamically bound to a virtual desktop based on a user which logs into the desktop. Due to this dynamic binding, the backup operation software cannot reside inside the virtual machine for risk of compromising the backup process. As far as recovery is concerned, flexible recovery options are required to accomplish the various types of recoveries that need to be performed, whether it be the recovery of the whole persona profile server, a single user profile, or even a specific file and folder from a user profile. When thinking about specific file and folder recovery, it is also important to keep in mind that the security settings, the actual permissions on those files and folders, need to be maintained at the time of recovery. And lastly, strive to meet expectations of the users. And nowadays, users expect their data, especially when virtualized or in the cloud, that they are getting backed up on a regular basis. This means that anytime these users may request that you have the ability to recover specific files. It seems to be a benefit of moving to virtual environment or cloud environment, making it easier for users to have access to that data. With the Acronis Backup and Recovery 11.5 solution, you can match the architecture of VMware View thanks to its flexible design. When you think about a solution to manage a VMware View desktop environment, you need something that offers flexible methods of covering a possibly changing environment. Your environment may change, you may grow, you may have more co-location, You need to make sure that your solution is able to grow with you. When your environment changes, you want to be able to change with it. Acronis Backup and Recovery 11.5 can cover your infrastructure when it's changing. It allows you to have capabilities for both the physical environment and the virtual environment. So if you do have some of your infrastructure still running as a physical machine, you could still cover that using the solution. When looking at the persona profiles, these are typically created into a NAS, SAN, or VM. You need to make sure that your solution is flexible enough to be able to cover all three scenarios. The Acronis Backup and Recovery 11.5 does have that capability to be able to protect this data regardless of whether it's on NAS, on SAN, or VM. And finally, it allows for flexible storage options, which allows for a solution to leverage the current storage infrastructure or any infrastructure available at your remote co-locations. Looking at security, another big topic when you think about the VMware View Business Process Desktop, there's a few things you have to keep in mind. The solution will be available across many different locations. This means that it's extremely important to make sure that your data is secure. Anyone could possibly get access to some of that data, so you want to make sure that the data is encrypted and the data is transferred in an encrypted manner, so that if any data if someone does get a breach, if there is a breach of security, there is that extra layer of security to make sure that no one can gain access to the data. Also important here is user access control. Users need to make sure that they can only access the data that they have access to, and this is a few things. So this is for backup. You back up the data that you want, but it's also for recovery. The data that gets recovered needs to have the permissions that you expect it to have. Let's get into some more specifics and look at how the individual components should be protected in the VMware View Business Process Desktop. First, let's look at the infrastructure components, and these are really a number of things. They are the Active Directory server, the VMware View connection broker, the transfer server. The thing that's specific about these machines is that they could actually reside on either a virtual machine or a physical machine. Where they reside will actually impact how you would protect this environment. If they are a physical machine, what you need to make sure you take a look at is installing an agent inside that machine. In the case of Acronis, what we do is we have an agent for Windows, which you can install inside of a machine, a physical machine, which allows you to create snapshots just like you could in a virtual machine. It will be the exact same backup, which gives you both the ability to restore the full system or individual files from that system. In the case of virtual machine, it's a little bit easier in a way. You can take advantage of proxies, what we call agent for VMware vSphere, which could be a physical machine or a virtual machine, which allows you to create agentless backups of that machine. It gives you the ability to both back up the full system or do individual recovery. Also important to note, this technology that we offer will take advantage of CBT, change block tracking, which expedites the ability to create incremental backup by having VMware give us the data, giving us the information about the blocks that have changed. As far as best practices, the components with dynamic data, so for example the Active Directory server, the connection broker, really should be backed up fairly frequently. We would recommend that you have at least a daily backup. And as far as the components without dynamic data, so the transfer server, the security server, those on the other hand, you should look more at a weekly backup. And in some cases you can even do monthly depending on how much your environment changes. Now for what I would say is possibly the most important piece, at least from the user standpoint, for the VMware View persona profiles. This is where you would store all your data. This is where every user's information gets stored. It can actually be a number of things. We typically would see it either as a NAS or a Windows server that is sharing out a CIF server. I guess a SAN as well. In the case of a Windows server that is sharing out the files, what you would treat it much like the VMware View Infrastructure component, the what we just mentioned. So there's two different ways. If it's a virtual machine, you can leverage agentless backup options, which would create a backup without having to install an agent inside that machine. That would not keep you from being able to recover files, so this is a great solution. And it will also make sure that you have a flexible, scalable solution, especially if your environment includes other VMware deployments, so a lot more virtual machines. In this environment, you can have one solution that not only covers the VMware View deployment, but also the rest of your infrastructure. When you set up backup job, we do recommend that regardless, even if you do install an agent inside of that machine, you would do a full system level backup. There's really no point in not doing the full system backup in this case, because you may run into the case at some point or another where you would have to recover the full system. Two things important for this. First of all, this is the user's data. They do use it a lot, so you definitely should do daily backups of that data. And the other thing is, because it is user data, there is also a lot of duplicate information. To deal with this duplicate data, one of the things you can take a look at is the storage node. The storage node is a component that allows you to have deduplication, so that way you can minimize the data requirements for that component. And then if the persona data resides on a NAS or a SAN, in this case it's a little bit different. What happens is it can be a managed storage. Let's say, for example, you have a volume like a NetApp, and what you can do is you can configure hardware snapshots, and these snapshots will take place on a daily, weekly basis. And what happens is it creates a subfolder, a subshare of that data into in the SAN. And what you would do is you point the backup process to that location. It would then pull the data from that snapshot and put it into a backup. Much like the previous slide, in this case you do want to create daily backups, so weekly fulls, daily incremental, taking advantage of the fact that the data is changing and you get as many backups, and also leveraging deduplication whenever possible to minimize the storage requirements. And finally, let's go to the demo and take a look at how Acronis Backup and Recovery 11.5 looks in a VMware View Business Process Desktop. Now for the demo. Taking a look at the environment right now, this is you're actually looking at the Acronis Management Server, which is a central management piece, which allows you to see and orchestrate the whole environment. To get to it, what you do is you start the console, much like VMware. This is architecture, it's tiered architecture. The management console is equivalent of the VI client. To launch our management console, you would double click on one of these icons over here, and once it pops up, you can perform a connection to either this machine, which in this case the management console and management server are actually on the same machine, or to a remote machine if you want to connect to a remote machine. Once connected, you see the whole environment. You can create groups here. These are machines with agents, machines where I've actually installed the agent inside of that machine. This is great if you need to protect a machine that is a physical machine. So if your vCenter machine, for example, is running as physical, you would install an agent inside that machine and it would show up under machines with agents. Virtual machines are shown in the virtual machine view. And if I look here, I can see all the virtual machine in my environment. I can also integrate with vCenter, which gives me the view inside of the vCenter. It will allow me to see different folders so that I can apply backup policies to specific folders within that structure. This view also gives you the ability to see a dashboard view, which allows you to create, to see really what is going on in your environment, success, failure. It will also alert you of anything that happened that is that it considers inadequate. For example, if a machine has not been backed up in a certain amount of time, it would notify you saying this machine has not been backed up in 30 days, for example. And all these alerts can be triggered and emailed so that you can take appropriate action quickly. Creating a backup job for a machine usually would start like this. We go to the main screen and click create a backup plan. If you do want to go directly to a machine, you can click to that machine and right click on it and create a backup plan, and it will pre-select the machine that you have inside the backup plan. The first step is to select the items that you want to back up. We are very flexible, so you can select specific machines, more than one machine, so you could create a backup plan for both your VM infrastructure and also your physical machine. In our case, we will take advantage of this view to pick all the VMs that are related to VMware View environment. In fact, we'll also pick the templates. Once we've picked all these machines, click on OK. The interesting thing about picking them as virtual machine, when they do show up under all virtual machine, we will take advantage of the virtual appliance infrastructure. A virtual appliance in our environment is a machine that's installed in a VM in the vCenter view, which allows you to use a VMware API to create a snapshot of that machine without having to install an agent on the machine. And we mentioned this a little bit earlier. This really makes managing the environment a lot easier. After picking what we want to back up, the next step is to pick the location where we want to send the backups. And we're very flexible. This can be a network location, an FTP server, SFTP server. We also provide cloud storage. In this use case, in this scenario, when you're using a business process desktop, more than likely you will go to some network attached storage. So a network attached storage, if it has deduplication, would show up under centralized. If you're simply pointing to a network share, you can actually type in the path //server/name. In my case, I have this centralized vault I've already created in the past, which is called backups. We've already placed a number of backups in that location. Now that we've done the what and the where, the question becomes how to backup. And how to backup is really a combination of things. This is the schedule, so when do you want to run this task? It is also the retention rule, so how many backups do you want to keep? This could be an everyday thing, an every week thing. And you can schedule this to be doing fulls or incrementals. Some even better features, even more advanced features, are the ability to convert the backup right after it's created into a VM. So basically to create a replica VM. So if there is some machine, let's say for example your vCenter machine that you're very concerned about, and it is running as a virtual machine, you can create a replica of that VM onto another one. This minimizes the recovery time objective. So that way it will only take the amount of time to power on the VM to be back up and running. We do have some additional options. I will highlight a couple of them which are especially critical in the VMware View environment. The first one being archive protection, which allows you to password protect and encrypt the archives. The second one being this disaster recovery plan. This is a very, very useful tool which will create a one-page document explaining how to recover that specific system. So if you need to document these processes, the software will actually document it and send you an email whenever something changes on that specific recovery operation. We do have notification, error handling, and some additional options such as using CDP, having the ability to run as many backups as you want in your VMware infrastructure. So for example, you can have 10 streams going on at the same time. If you need more, you can put another appliance which is then also capable of another 10 stream. So you can scale infinitely using this tool. You would want to name your backup VMware View Business Process Desktop, and then click OK. Once this job is created, it would automatically run on the schedule. If you simply want to run the job, you would go up here and click on Run. Once your backups are configured, this is the backup of the full system. If you do want some granular backup for specific files, you can set up a different job which would back up the files. Keep in mind that most of our users typically, and in the case of VMware View Business Process Desktop, this is really the best way to go about it. You would back up the full system and this gives you the granular recovery option so that you can pull any file from that location. So when you think of the VMware View Persona server, you would back up all the system so that you can recover the whole system, but you can also recover specific files. So if you have a user that wants to recover a specific file, you can select that file and it will recover it for you. You could also recover a full persona. So if that one user persona, it's located in a folder structure which is named after the name of the user, and when you recover that, you can actually recover the full structure, and then when the user does log back in, it would bind itself. It would notice, and the user would not notice any difference. It would be exactly the same as it was originally. Going into recovery options, there are a number of different recovery options. There is the ability to recover a full system, and when you do that, you would go up here, select recover, pick the data that you want to recover, and we'll pick this from the data path in our centralized vault, and then pick a specific machine that you want to recover from. So let's say, for example, I want to restore my vCenter. I can pick this vCenter server, pick the point in time, and then it will recover that server at that point in time. In this case, this is actually a vCenter appliance, and I can recover it to a new virtual machine. This is my host. This is the appliance that will be performing the recovery option, and I can customize the VM. So if I want to go to a bigger disk, if I want to go to a smaller disk, if I want to go to different data store, different host, different vCenter, all of these are possible as long as I select the options when I'm going through the process. I will select where I put my disk 2, and at the end I can click OK. Once I click OK, the operation launches, and then we launch the actual recovery process. This is an extremely efficient way of recovering. It only takes a few minutes. The alternate need when you're thinking about VMware View Business Process Desktop, and really this is actually a common use case for any desktop environment, where the users do expect that you create backup of their files. So the most common recovery scenario is actually a file type recovery. In those type of cases, the process is actually extremely similar. You click on recover, pick on the machine that you want to recover from, so the archive that you want to recover from, but in this case recover files. You go down through the structure, pick the appropriate file that you want to recover, and then click OK. Once you launch this task, everything will be recovered to the original location with the same permission set to make sure that the users that had access to these files still have access to these files.